He's an unabashed progressive who supports Medicare for all and a slate of other policies aligned with the left of the Democratic Party. Larry Smith hopes to win the 1st District primary and go on to represent the district in Washington, a feat that he'd be the first to accomplish in 140 years. He spoke to us at length today about his background, platform, and his strategy for pulling off the unexpected in November.
I'm a professor of history at Walter State Community College.
Your background has given you a kind of a lifelong interest in politics. Talk about that.
Yeah, as a professional historian, I've been studying the modern world for over 30 years. Most of my material is covered in the period since 1815, so the 19th and 20th centuries, which gives me a good perspective on where all of these policies originated and how they've changed over the years, and especially since the 1980s when they really took a big change toward the right worldwide. Those are things that aren't surprising to me. I've got an academic background where I understand the basis of all of those things.
And you said that for years you considered the typical role of an academic and a historian to be removed from politics.
Right.
Describe that, and then what changed your mind?
I think really when the Bernie Sanders campaign started in 2015, and for the first time I had seen a national politician that had some of the same ideas that I did. That gave me an interest in following the current events much more closely and getting up to date on the politics as they're happening over the last 3 or 4 years. And then the situation as it's gone in the last couple of years, and not just because of Donald Trump, but because of a lot of things, I saw the need for people who have a progressive mindset and who understand the issues. It's time for us to take a stand, regardless of what our jobs are. As an American, I just felt it was my duty to use my skill set that I have to actually try to help working Americans and ordinary people that are still being left behind by the system that we have now.
Well, let's talk then about people in the 1st District of
Sure.
Northeast Tennessee and policies, and what you said was somewhat of a political shift that began, or maybe a policy shift that began in the 1980s, you said.
Right.
Talk about what that, kind of sum that up if you can, and then
Okay.
how you feel like that affects people in the district, working people in the district,
Sure.
and what you would do, what policies you would propose to address those things.
Well, simply starting in about 1975, you have what's known as the neoliberal revolution. That's the way we talk about it in academics, meaning that the elites started working together regardless of political party, and they tried to drain the middle class of their money. They deregulated Wall Street. They broke labor unions. They increased military budgets, and this was a worldwide or Western phenomenon. It wasn't just in the United States. Of course, Reagan is the most well-known of the neoliberals, although we use that term differently in the United States. In the United States, and then if you look at the charts and graphs since the middle of the 1970s, Jimmy Carter did a little bit of deregulation. You'll see that the gap between rich and poor has increased dramatically and is continuing to increase, and increased also under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents. You've got very little agency for anybody that works for a living. The only people that get government attention are people in the 1%, and those people generally are the ones who control Congress and Congress people. I mean, there's studies that show this. If you're an average worker, you have no political agency. If you're in the 1%, you sometimes write the legislation that Congress. Worker productivity has gone up, but wages have been stagnant really since the 1960s for working people. If you own something, including businesses and stock, you're doing quite well in the economy since the 1980s, including today. If you work for a living, your wages are stagnant or they're moving in the wrong direction. If you look at any metric that compares congressional districts, the 435 congressional districts. Ours is something like 10th from the bottom in just about every metric that measures human success and wealth inequality, medical bankruptcies. Just about anything you look at, we're worse than the majority of the country. So this inequality has hurt us disproportionately than it has some of the other more wealthier areas.
If you won the primary and ended up being elected to Congress, what are some of the policies, or what kind of work would you do to try to advance that agenda?
Well, first off, I think Medicare for All is one of the things that we have to look at as a sort of linchpin to solving a lot of the economic problems that working people have, because we spend a tremendous amount of our income on health outcomes. We spend a lot of money, there's a lot of debt, there's a lot of medical bankruptcies. We need a single payer system where there is no charge at the point of service, and that's going to be a huge tax cut, basically. You could look at it that way for most Americans. They're not going to have to spend nearly as much of their disposable income. I believe in canceling medical debt and canceling student debt, and also more progressive taxes on the wealthy, not on regular people, but on the wealthy. So the economy is dragging along. It's doing okay, I mean, right? But if we really want to see something like we had in the 1940s and 1950s, I think the money has to get back in the hands of regular people, middle class, working class people. If they get the money, they're going to buy cars, they're going to buy houses, they're going to buy things, and it's going to help to boost the economy. So,
would you describe that as kind of the Keynesian approach?
I do. I consider myself a neo-Keynesian, and I use that approach. And I think if you look at the time we were under that particular system, there were no major downturns in the economy. There were some, but nothing that was like the 2007 events. And you had a vibrant middle class, and you had a very progressive tax system, and the government had money to spend on things like the highway systems, and we need, obviously, that sort of thing today, infrastructure repair, green technology, things like that. We can have that, again, if we just rein in these corporations and get the money back to where it needs to be in the hands of people that will spend it.
Have you noted on your website that you are in support of some iteration of a Green New Deal?
I look at the New Deal end of it more than the green end of it, although we obviously, we have to address climate change, and this is the best way to do it. And when President Roosevelt attacked the Depression, he said, we're going to attack the Depression like we're going to war. And I think that's what we have to do with climate change and with the infrastructure and all of the other things that we need to do. We need to invest in our communities, and we need to do that with jobs that can bring about renewable energy, jobs that can repair the infrastructure, and these should be jobs that pay a living wage and that hopefully are represented by labor unions, and at least give people agency over their own economic lives. And if you look at the statistics, the stuff that AOC puts out and Bernie Sanders and even the Green Party, you'll see the multiplier effect and how that will create private sector jobs. And it will also, I also support worker-owned businesses and cooperatives. So we need a pluralistic economy. We need to emphasize small businesses and keeping the money in the community and in our district as opposed to sending it off to corporate America.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about policy. This district is known for constituent services. Do you believe that you would be able to maintain the type of constituent service level that previous Congress people have in terms of just VA stuff and disability benefits and all that, and then still advance that agenda you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can't go back on the things that we've done well and the things that we are approaching in that sense, but we certainly can do all of those things. And again, the veterans is, and of course I know that Phil Rowe, being head of the Veterans Committee, and got a lot of press about those things, but we progressives really are interested in veterans' rights and expanding veterans' rights. And even though we want to go to a Medicare for all system, we still want to keep the VA intact and have better public services. And I think one of the things we need to do, if I'm elected, is to have a better rapport with my constituents as the congressional term goes on, to have more meetings, more town halls, not when it's just time for elections, but all the way through, to hear what people are saying. How am I doing? What can I do better? Those sorts of things. And I don't think we've had that as much.
It's been 140 years.
Yeah, 1881, yeah.
How
Right.
do you how do you give yourself a chance of actually winning an election?
The key is just to get the message out there. If we can get the message out there to the people who don't vote, and that's obviously over half of the population, I think we have a chance to win this thing. If you just go for the people who vote and you just sort of have a bland agenda, I don't think there's a chance of winning this. I think you've got to talk about big ideas and things that they're going to change their lives. And because there's a lot of people, I was at the COPA meeting the other night about ballot health, and I heard all of these stories about people who are suffering, not just because of lack of services, but because of lack of money, and a lot of them have lost hope in the system. We've got to reach out to those people. We've got to go talk to them, knock on doors. I'll talk to civic groups, church groups. I'll talk to town. I'll talk to any group that wants to hear me. That was my idea going in to this, was to make an argument, to go out and tell people, here's what I think the direction we need to go, and and it's up to you then to then go out and make those changes, because it ultimately is up to the people.
And if someone wants to learn more detail about you and your platform, what's the easiest way for someone to do that?
The easiest way to go is to LarrySmithForCongress.com, and then there are links to my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. I have a bigger Facebook following, and I do more on Facebook than the other two platforms.
In Johnson City, Jeff Keeling, News Channel 11.